So when you see in the article that you have, when you have time to read it, you'll notice that I talked about two winners. I talked about two winners, and I talked about babies. And I did it to show brain power in Hispanics, Latinos, and Africans, which by extension means brain power in anybody. I just happen to pick these groups because they're the ones always on the bottom. So I wanted to show that the truth is upside down. It's been turned upside down. People have us wondering whether kids can succeed, and then wandering around saying with the slogan, every child can succeed, which means that you doubt that they can, or you wouldn't need the slogan. That's why I say, why are people telling me this? Every child can succeed. Why are you telling me this? Except that you know that most people don't believe it. That's why you're telling me. I know why you're telling me that. I've used it myself. So that in order to deal with that at the outset, I want to do a little bit more of what I did in that article before I drop what I thought was my bomb, which is the title of the article, that says, the problem with kids has nothing to do with teaching techniques, doesn't have anything to do with the kids or their families, doesn't have anything to do with instructional techniques. What it has to do with is whether you want them to learn or not. In the final analysis, if kids aren't learning, the only reason is that you don't want them to. Whoever's in charge is not able to impose what they want on the order around them. You'll notice that I talked about Abdullah Shabazz when you get around to reading that article. And Abdullah Shabazz used to be with the Nation of Islam. And then he ran the University of Islam at one point. Then he went to Clark Atlanta University, where he was at a university not known for high performance in mathematics. And he had a group of people that wanted to learn math, and so he taught them math. And by the way, he had an admissions test that he created to find out who could be admitted to the math program, the master's degree in math program. And his admissions test was a one-item test. And no test company had tried to buy it because if they bought it, they wouldn't be making any money. Because he can even tell you, he can give the test away. And the test is very simple. He asked a student at Clark Atlanta University, do you want to learn mathematics? If the student answers yes, they're admitted. If they answer no, then they're not admitted. It's as simple as that. And you say, well, now what does that get you? Well, what it got him was enough students who had low scores on English tests and also low scores on arithmetic that he could work with, because he knew that what mattered wasn't what their minds could do today, but what their minds could do tomorrow. And so he was able to produce 103 master's degrees in mathematics in a 6-year period from a school that had had almost none before. And out of this 106, they and their students became 100 plus PhDs in mathematics. At other schools, they had such a good foundation at their master's level that they cakewalked their way through the University of New York, Chicago, all these places had PhDs in mathematics. They normally don't give those away. That number accounts for over half of the black PhDs who have PhDs in math today in America. Came from that one man at Clark Atlanta University. In a 6-year period, he's outproduced decades of production in all the fine schools of the country. To me, that says something about the lack of qualification of the rest of higher education. He left Clark Atlanta University and went to Saudi Arabia and taught for almost 20 years in the university over there in mathematics, did research. He's done research for the federal government, United States federal government. He's back at Clark Atlanta University. In March of last year, he had 500 students in his new program in math improvement who had honors in mathematics. 500 honor students in mathematics. I attended the ceremony. And out of the 500 honor students, he had 125 with 4.0, perfect scores in math. And they don't give math away. I'm saying that he's working with a population that's not supposed to do this. So I'm saying that if he knows how to do it, then that can't be a puzzle about how to teach African kids. And anybody that's got a puzzle in their mind about how to teach African kids has to look at their own qualifications. That means you need some training. And interestingly enough, it's easy to get this training, but you have to admit that you need it. And then you have to go for it. I also cited the work of Jaime Escalante in my article. And I think both Jaime Escalante and Shabazz teach us certain things that aren't apparent. Picked Jaime Escalante because, pure and simply, he's one of the best teachers in the world. But also, I grew up in Texas, so I was very much familiar with the Mexican-American population as a kid. And I knew that when I went to school in Colorado, that what they were saying about the Mexican kids in Colorado was false. I knew it because of my own interactions with the kids in Colorado and in Texas. I knew that they were just like African kids, mostly that they had not been exposed to the things that would allow them to learn what other people had learned, and that any low scores that we had were not due. And I had some pretty low scores in my junior high school. I was told that I would never graduate by one of my high school algebra teachers, who I later had as a student at the University of Denver. And so I'm attracted to Jaime Escalante because he did for the Hispanic students what Shabazz did for the African students. And these aren't the only examples that I could have cited, by the way. I just happened to pick those two. Articles can't be too long in the journal, so you run out of space before you run out of examples. And those who know the Escalante story, and it's told in brief in that article, know that this is the teacher who came from Bolivia, by the way. And that may be why he was able to be successful. Because he hadn't bought into the American idea that only a handful of people can be mathematicians. He didn't know that, so he just kept on going. And so when he confronted Latino students in the Los Angeles Unified School District at Garfield High School, he decided that he didn't want to put them in special education, where most of them were going, or into the low track, so that they could get half a year algebra in a year's work, which is what many of them were getting. If they got any algebra at all, they probably got a remedial arithmetic. So he didn't see remedial students, he saw geniuses, and he decided that he would teach them as if they were geniuses. And for those of you who know secondary school level mathematics, you know that as far as paper and pencil tests are concerned, the highest test that you can pass is the advanced placement test on the scholastic aptitude test. That only 2% of the students in high school take the advanced placement test. A lot of students take the SAT, but not many take the AP SAT. And in fact, no Hispanic students were taking it at Garfield High School when Escalante got there. Now we have a record of over 10 years on the average with 50 Hispanic students, 50 each year out of one high school for 10 years, so that you have 500 plus advanced placement passes. That means in calculus, not in arithmetic or algebra, but in calculus. Name me a school, any kind of school, including white middle-class schools that have 50 students from one school that passed the advanced placement calculus test at the top level. And he's working with people that were so-called illegal immigrants, migrant workers, and what have you, and stuff like that. But he didn't know. See, nobody told him that he was working with migrant workers and illegal immigrants. So all he thought he was talking to was geniuses. And that's what he produced, was genius in the kid. The other interesting thing about Escalante is that he taught two other teachers how to do exactly what he did. So he's not only a teacher of kids, but staff development was his deal. But that also tells you that if one teacher can do it, other teachers can. So when he taught Ben Jimenez, and I forget the name of the second teacher, Villarado, I think it was, he taught both of those, and they both contributed to these 50 AP passes. They had students who were passing the advanced placement test, and one of them, Jimenez, hadn't had any before until he came under the tutelage of Jaime Escalante. So I talked about these in the paper, and you can see what I'm doing. I'm setting up the audience of educators, and I'm challenging the audience of educators, because I'm saying, really, if you're in a room talking about student achievement, only some people have a right to talk. There's only a handful of people who have a right to talk. That's those who are winning. The ones who haven't figured it out yet shouldn't be making speeches. Shouldn't be teaching teachers. Shouldn't be supervising anybody. You understand what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. I'm cold-blooded on this. I mean, nothing is more important. I'll do anything to help the kids succeed. That's my only purpose in education, is their success. So I don't have any political debts to pay to anybody. I can say anything I want to say anytime I get ready to say it. And I always do. And I always will, till I draw my last breath. So I don't have any friends that I need to stroke. I don't have anything like that. I have a lot of friends, but most of my friends are like me. They talk up. Shabazz talks up. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Escalante, but I've met some of the people who work with Escalante. I've met with a lot of other educators who are winners, just like these, and I could go on and talk about them. But I produced these examples in this article for the reason that I wanted to set up everything else I had to say. In other words, that's the credibility factor. Now, I say that if somebody disagrees with me, they have to establish their credibility by showing that they know how to take kids who are on the bottom and take them to the top. So you can't get, it's like qualifying for the Olympics. You can't just run in the Olympics. You got to go win some races at a respectable level. Then you can get into competition. And that's the way I think it ought to be.